So you'll see in this timeline that's kind of set up a specific way. There's like a animation here, and then there's this column of keyframes, and then there's this animation here, and there's a column of extra keyframes. This column of extra keyframes is really important. For starters, it's just a buffer between one animation and the other, so that in case you need to move things around, you can. But also, you'll see there's a red flag here too. We actually need this. This one right here is called, still end. This one's called run end. This one's called shock end. Excuse me. We actually need these to have it run properly using the action scripting. So whenever you set up an animation, like let's say, when I get my stuff in here from Illustrator, come on, there we go. It's gonna look kind of like this, right? You're gonna have like one frame for everything. I'll expand it out to here, right? But I won't just expand it out by having empty frames go out there, right? I'm gonna make sure hit F6. There's a whole set of keyframes out here, so I can do my animation in here, and then this will be the same. And then when I start a new animation, I'm actually going to make a new set of keyframes and expand that out. And you want to make sure you have this extra row of keyframes before you start adding motion tweens to this, because Flash gets annoyed if you have, if this ends with a motion tween and you try to add a frame here, Flash gets finicky and annoyed. So you always want to add the extra keyframes before you start animating. The other good thing about that is it gives you a good end spot that matches your start spot, right? So this matches this. And that's another thing we need to help the action script run. If it's going to go from this look to this one, to this one, to this one, the way it does that seamlessly is if you have the beginning and ends are the same for everything. So my character right here, he kind of breathes in and breathes out, and it ends where it started. So it can go to this next thing where he walks, and that'll match the beginning of this one. It'll also match the beginning of this one. So they all begin and end at the same place. They're little cycles you're creating, basically. So that's what everyone was working on in the second half of class yesterday. It's what they brought home with them to work on between now and class. All right. So what we went over in class was no one learned how to actually write any of the script. They just learned what these things mean, generally speaking, what the bigger chunks mean. And I've, in the file, included this grayed out stuff. It's called comments. It doesn't actually do anything, but it tells you in plain English, what these things do, right? So we're going to ignore this top one for a second. I'll do that last. This section right here, you can actually kind of guess what it's doing just by reading it. Go to and stop, go to and play, current frame, loop run. This is how it's navigating through all of your little animations, right? You can tell it's talking about the alien right here. It says it about 100 times. That's referencing my movie clip, which is called The Alien. And then all this stuff that's green and in quotation marks, those are my frame labels. You saw those little red flags, and they were called run and run end and still end. That's how it knows where to look. You could technically put a whole frame number in there, but then if you changed your animation, right, like if you add frames to this, then run doesn't start on frame 37, it starts on something else, and that means you gotta go back and change your script. So these labels allow us to suddenly say, you know what, I wish this was longer, and you can just add a whole bunch of keyframes and everything will still work properly. Alright, so that's what this section is referring to, and it's a section you're gonna have to make the most changes to when we start adding your own stuff in. You can copy and paste this from either mine or from the Ninja, but then you'll have to change the name of your movie clip to be whatever yours is called, and you will have to change the name of your frames to be whatever yours are called. And also, right now, this only has room for 2 things plus the jump. And so any other actions, those are going to need to get added in. And that's what we're going to go over next time. The second section here, this is probably the easiest. This is just spelling out which buttons on the keyboard matter. Or if you had mouse clicks, which mouse clicks matter, right? So it says key pressed actions, key released actions. Pressing a key is different from releasing a key. And it just spells it out, left and right and A. Right? So left and right are how the character moves back and forth. A is how they jump. Technically, that could be anything. You could change this letter to anything. And if you need to add a new one, you can just copy. There we go. Paste. And I can say, L is going to mean something, right? And I'd have to make up something new that it means, but that's all it takes. So this is one of the reasons why copy and paste works so nicely. All right, so this is just saying which buttons matter. And it specifies it for this character, for the alien character. If there was another character you could control or something, you would specify it for that one. This next section here is probably going to be the toughest to understand because it's kind of the weirdest, right? So if here they're saying, oh, left on the keyboard is this thing, quote unquote, move left, and right on the keyboard is quote unquote, move right. Well, what does that mean? You actually have to tell Flash, and that's what this is. Move left means the character moves in the direction of 2, this way. And when he does it, it's going to play this section right here called Run. And it's going to be scaled in this direction. And by the way, if you look at the move right, you'll see that instead of -2, it's moving +2, so it's moving in the opposite direction. And its scale is -1. Right? My character's facing left. So if he's running left, his scale could just be 1. He's facing that direction. But if he needs to face the other way, his scale is -1, which flips it for us. So you only have to animate the character walking or running or anything directional once. And then action scripting will do the rest for you. So if we see what that looks like, I press left, he moves to the left. I press right, he just flips to the right. So I only had to animate that once, which is good. The other thing is that these numbers are just units of measurement. So if I wanted him to walk faster, I'd put in a higher number. If I want him to walk slower, I'd put in a lower number. The ninja runs at 10. My guy is a lot slower, so he runs at 2. Let's see. The jump is defined actually as turning off gravity. Right now, there's technically gravity holding the character down. So when you turn it off to a negative number, it just sends the character flying up in the air. Right? And then, so the higher this number, the higher the character will jump. Now, what this means for your animation, this is very important, is that the walk, actually we'll go to the ninja because he actually has a jump animation. So his run, see how he's running in place? You don't need any lateral motion. You don't need to move your character, right? The action script will do that for you. So you just do a walk in place or a run in place. And if you had both, if you had a walk and a run, then, his feet might move faster on the run, and then in the action script you use a higher number and he moves faster this way. The jump, again, it's just his feet moving. He's in place. He's not, center of mass is not really going anywhere except when he's doing the, bouncing up and down for the still, but it's generally staying in the same spot. Any upward motion when he jumps, that's an action script. Any side motion, like lateral right movement, that's action script. So you have to make sure you don't animate him actually moving upwards, right? Whatever character is jumping, it's just you move the arms and the legs and, you wobble the sword, whatever it is, but you don't move the character upward. The script is going to take care of that, right? So this section is defining what it means to move left, move right, jump. Let's see, or stop moving. When you stop moving, play the still frames, right? This last part, mostly we're just going to copy and paste. We don't have to worry about it. But the add event listener, this is telling Flash to listen to the keyboard, right? That the keyboard is relevant. If you were to have mouse clicks, you would have to say the mouse click is relevant. Let's see. And then there's a bit in here about looping, like the game doesn't end. And there's also a bit about gravity, which is when the player hits jump, the gravity turns off. This tells it how fast to turn back on. I say right there, how fast to accelerate gravity as the character falls. So a higher number means they'll fall faster. Alright. So that's the general gist of where these things are. You can find a lot more details on this in your book, Chapter 10, Stage one is what we're looking at, and actually only part of stage one. He has several stages. In building the whole game, he actually goes through about 6 or 7 stages. We're only doing the first one for this assignment. But everything else is actually just more of the same. It's just slightly more complicated versions of similar things. So if you really got into this and liked this, you could easily kind of transition to the next thing. I saved this top part for last because it's the one I did go over in detail of what you're actually looking at, what these words mean. Um, and it's a good starting point for understanding why scripting works the way it does, why it's important.